Why do U.S. prosecutors want a 1 day sentence for Breonna Taylor shooting? And by the way, she was not just shot, Breonna Taylor. She was murdered. She was killed in cold blood. Taylor, an emergency medical technician, was killed in her home during a botched police raid in March of 2020. Tamika Palmer, the mother of Breonna Taylor, stands next to a painting of her daughter at the gathering to mark 2 years since police officers killed her when they entered her home at Jefferson Square Park in Louisville, Kentucky. U.S. March 13th, 2022. It is now 2025. This article was written on July 18th of 2025. The United States Department of Justice is seeking a shortened prison sentence of just 1 day for an ex police officer convicted of using excessive force during a raid in Louisville, Kentucky, that led to the death of Breonna Taylor, an African American medical worker, in March 2020. Brett Hankinson was convicted in November last year of blindly firing several shots during a failed drug raid, which resulted in Taylor's death. Although his shots were not the ones which hit Taylor, prosecutors argued his actions were a violation of Taylor's rights and others present at the scene. After it spent several years pursuing a conviction murder under the previous administration of the DOJ's recommendation, DOJ's Department of Justice on Thursday represents a 180-degree turn which has caused anger in the Black community. Hankinson sentencing will take place on Monday when a federal judge will decide his term at a hearing. Here's what we know about the case. This is a picture of a protester brandishing a portrait of Breonna Taylor during a rally in remembrance on the first anniversary of her death. So this photo was taken on May 13th, 2021. What happened to Breonna Taylor? Taylor, an emergency medical technician, was shot dead during a raid by police from the Louisville Metro Police Department in her apartment in the early hours of March 13th, 2020. She was asleep. Seven police officers in normal clothing outside of their police uniforms executed a no-knock search warrant. So people who don't even look like police, who are not even knocking at your door, are barging into your house and shooting. Seven plainclothes officers executed a no-knock search warrant. Three officers broke down the door to her two-bedroom apartment where Taylor was in bed with her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker. Walker, who possessed a licensed firearm, fired one shot. He later told police he thought the men were intruders, and rightfully so. These people were in plain clothing, not just as police officers, not announcing that they were police officers, not even knocking to inform the people who they were, just breaking down the door, coming in, shooting. One officer, Jonathan Mattingly, was struck and wounded in the thigh. Mattingly and his colleague Miles Cosgrove directly returned fire into the apartment. Cosgrove delivered the fatal shot that killed Taylor. She was shot 6 times and died in the hallway. Hankinson ran to the side of the building and fired 10 shots into the apartment through a window and sliding door covered with blinds. Some of the bullets hit an occupied apartment adjacent to Taylor's. A report by the Federal Bureau of Investigation determined that the police fired 32 shots in total. The boyfriend sends one shot, the police shoot 32 times in total into the same room. And somehow they managed not to kill the ex boyfriend, but to kill Breonna Taylor. Jamarcus Glover, Taylor's ex boyfriend, so earlier in the article they called him her boyfriend. That is not true. Jamarcus Glover was her ex boyfriend, had been the original target of the search, as authorities believed he hid narcotics at Taylor's apartment. He was arrested at a separate location in Louisville that night before Taylor's killing. So these are two different men. I take that back. It is unclear if the same team of officers arrested Glover. Taylor's murder and an initial absence of charges against the police officers involved triggered mass months long protests across the country. No officers faced direct charges over Taylor's death. Only Hankinson faced charges for firing blindly. Taylor's case in the killing of George Floyd in May 2020 fueled a national reckoning on racism and police brutality as part of the Black Lives Matter movement. Taylor's family received a $12 million settlement from the city of Louisville in September 2020. The city has also banned no-knock raids with the introduction of the Breonna Law. This is Brett Hankinson. This is the one being held responsible for killing Breonna Taylor, even though allegedly other officers inflicted the fatal wounds. Why they are not being charged and processed, I do not know. Why are prosecutors recommending a 1 day sentence? Prosecutors under the Trump administration are recommending that Hankinson serve no further jail term for the case and that he should be instead sentenced to time already served plus 3 years of supervised probation. Hankinson served 1 day in jail after he was arrested in 2023 for his court appearance. At the time, federal prosecutors under the Biden administration sought a conviction against him that could have amounted to a maximum life sentence. In November of 2024, a federal jury found Hankinson guilty of using excessive force and depriving Taylor of her civil rights. However, in a memo, they're saying in the article that Hankinson did not deliver the fatal shot. I don't care because they all shot into her home and they should not have. They all shot into her home and they should not have. They had no reason to. They were in plain clothes, dressed like everyday people, shooting 32 shots into someone's door and breaking down the front door so they could get in there and shoot while in her house. However, in a memo on Thursday, the DOJ said is there is no need for a prison sentence to protect the public from Hankinson. The memo added that although Hankinson's response in the fraught circumstances was unreasonable, in hindsight, that reasonable response did not kill or wound Breonna Taylor, her boyfriend, her neighbors, defendants, fellow officers, or anyone else. I don't understand how that makes any sense. The memo added that although Hankinson's response in the fraught circumstances was unreasonable, in hindsight, that unreasonable response did not kill or wound Breonna Taylor, her boyfriend, her neighbors, defendants, fellow officers, or anyone else. So he sent a gang of bullets. He sent a dozen bullets through her house, but because he didn't hit anybody, the punishment is unreasonable. And the officers who actually killed her are not being prosecuted. Whose bullets allegedly, this is their story. This is their story. Personally, I believe it was Hankinson because I don't think some man who didn't shoot her would take the fall for this. The memo added that, I don't want to read that again. What happened to the other officers? Hankinson is the only one of the three officers at the scene to face charges. He was fired from the police force in June 2020, and Cosgrove was fired in 2021. After look, Cosgrove was one of the people who shot their weapon, who fired their weapon as well. After local investigations determined they had violated standard practice by shooting blindly, Mattingly retired in April 2021. So why aren't these people, Cosgrove and Mattingly, in jail for the murder of Breonna Taylor, especially if we know these three were there and that we know that Hankinson did not shoot the fatal shot? So because Mattingly retired, he doesn't get prosecuted? That's murder. There's nothing legal about what they did. That's murder. How is her ex-boyfriend the target of a raid? The target of you doing your no-knock entry? He's alive, but you killed her in her bed. No bullets hit him. All the bullets hit her. She was shot 6 times. Okay, so there's 32 bullets. Not all of them hit her, but 6 did. How are you looking for one person and you murder the other and you get to walk away because oops, accident? Oops, accident. You get to walk away. Another ex officer who was shot, who was not at the scene, pleaded guilty to federal charges of violating Taylor's civil rights by falsely stating on the search warrant that Taylor received packages for Glover. So imagine this. They're saying that Breonna Taylor was receiving packages for Glover, Glover being the drug dealer who allegedly they were looking for. So this other officer who was there, he lied on Breonna saying she was receiving packages from Glover for Glover on behalf of him. She was not. She was not. She was not. Two other former officers pleaded not guilty to similar charges. So they lied in their paperwork about Breonna Taylor, allegedly to get to her boyfriend. But what I've learned about this case is that Breonna Taylor is a woman who allegedly would not move, would not, something about her home that the state wanted, and she wouldn't give it up, and she was targeted for that reason. Allegedly, something related to eminent domain. She was targeted for that reason. Allegedly. If the court heeds the DOJ's advice, none of the officers involved in the case would have faced jail time. It's not certain that the court will agree to the recommendation. So we don't know if the court is going to agree until Monday, and today is Friday. How have Taylor's family responded? Ben Crump, the civil rights lawyer who helped Taylor's family secure the $12 million settlement against Louisville, said in a statement on the social media site X that the DOJ's recommendation was an insult to the life of Breonna Taylor and a blatant betrayal of the jury's decision. This sets a dangerous precedent, Crump wrote on Thursday, and a precedent is something you use in court to prove your case, okay? The precedent is something you use in court to help prove your case. Let's say you committed a crime and someone committed the same crime you did and they went to court for it and they didn't have to be punished. They could use that case as a precedent to say, well, this person wasn't punished, so I shouldn't be either. It was legal then. It was found to be legal then. It should be legal now. That's why it's so important when something sets a dangerous precedent. A precedent is not just an idea. A precedent is something that you can take into a courthouse and say, this cop did it too. He walked free, so I should walk free. Part of the way lawyers fight during cases is using old cases to prove their point. When a police officer is found guilty of violating someone's constitutional rights, there must be real accountability and justice. Recommending just 1 day in prison sends the unmistakable message that white officers can violate the civil rights of Black Americans with near total impunity. What was the verdict in Hankinson's trial? The DOJ, under a different leadership, charged Hankinson in 2022, so that was under Biden, on one account of violating the civil rights of Breonna Taylor and her boyfriend Walker, as well as Taylor's neighbors when he blindly fired into her home. Because I guess her home was aligned with someone else's and the bullets went through their home as well. The state of Kentucky arraigned Hankinson on similar charges but cleared him of wrongdoing in March 2022. However, after 4 days of deliberation, a federal jury declared a mistrial in November 2023 as jurors were unable to reach a joint decision. Witnesses gave conflicting testimonies, including about whether the police officers had announced themselves at the scene of the shooting. Walker, for one, testified that the officers did not identify themselves before breaking in, so why wouldn't someone shoot back? That's the stand your ground law. If you break into my house, if you're an intruder, I get to shoot you. I get to shoot you dead. Why would you execute a no knock warrant anyhow? Police, come out. You're under arrest. Say something before just kicking down my door and I don't know what's going on. Other police officers, including Cosgrove, also testified that Hankinson had violated standard practice when he shot into Taylor's apartment blindly without identifying a target. So he was just shooting willy nilly. My thing is, if Hankinson didn't deliver a shot, any shot that entered into Breonna Taylor's body, why aren't we looking at Cosgrove and Mattingly or whatever the other guy's last name is? Hankinson, who took the stand, defended his helplessness. This cop with a gun is helpless. Defended his helplessness at the scene, saying he believed his team was being attacked. The officer claimed he saw Walker's figure illuminated by the muzzle flash from his weapon and said he thought the gun was an AR-15. Now, as far as I know, no gun was found, and this man legally was determined not to have an AR-15 anywhere. So he thought his people, he heard one shot. He heard one shot because Walker, the ballistic proof proves that Walker, the boyfriend of Breonna Taylor, only delivered one shot. But when the muzzle flash from his weapon saw Walker's figure, it shone a light on his figure. He imagined that he had an AR-15 rifle, which prompted him to go to the other side of the apartment and open fire. I can't see clearly. I was helpless. We went in there and shooting at people and didn't tell them who we were. And when someone shot back, I was just so scared. I thought he had an AR-15. Do police officers receive light sentences for killing or assaulting Black people in the U.S.? Many activists and rights groups believe the U.S. law enforcement and justice systems allow officers, especially white officers, involved in the wrongful deaths and assault of Black people to get away with overly lenient punishment compared with civilians. Derek Chauvin, the officer who knelt on George Floyd for 9 minutes until he died in May 2020, was seen as an exception when he was sentenced to 22 years in jail. Some other cases which have drawn. If Derek Chauvin was really in prison for 22 years, he wouldn't even last that long. Last I checked, they were trying to get him out of there, citing that people, want to retaliate against him. Some other cases which have drawn criticism for light sentences for police officers, however, include the following: Dante Wright. Police formerly of Kimberly Potter shot dead Dante Wright, a 20-year-old Black man, during a traffic stop in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota. So when people say they were killed for driving while Black, this is what they mean. How does a traffic stop end in a fatality? In April 2021, that's when that happened. Potter, who shot Wright at close range in the chest, later said she had meant to use her service taser rather than her gun. Wright died at the scene. Potter was found guilty of first-degree manslaughter and second-degree manslaughter and received a sentence of just 2 years, serving 16 months. The city of Brooklyn Center paid a settlement of $3.2 million to Wright's family for his wrongful death. Following public outrage and protests over Wright's death, the police department changed its policies about arresting people for misdemeanor offenses. Wright's death also led to changes in police taser procedures in Minnesota and other states. You get 2 years for taking someone's entire life. Elijah McClain, Elijah Jovan McClain, 23 years old, was arrested. He was autistic, by the way. Was arrested by police officers in Aurora, Colorado, while walking home from a convenience store August 24th, 2019. The police officers were responding to a call from a person concerned about an unarmed man wearing a ski mask and looking sketchy. Mind you, it was winter in Colorado. It's cold, and he's a young autistic man walking in the cold. McLean was handcuffed while one of the officers applied a chokehold. When paramedics arrived, they injected McLean with 500 milligrams of ketamine to sedate him. He suffered cardiac arrest and died in the hospital 6 days later. I don't believe that this is true because Elijah McLean died at the scene. We watched it. I think it took a while for a doctor to declare him dead, but he died in a pool of his own vomit. So you putting someone on life support doesn't mean they're alive. 3 police officers and 2 paramedics were charged with his death. 2 officers were acquitted of all charges, just got to walk away. This boy was a college educated violinist, autistic, volunteered at old folks' homes, very thin. He wore glasses. Both paramedics and one of the officers were convicted of negligent homicide. One of the paramedics, who was also found guilty of second-degree assault and sentenced to 5 years in prison and 3 years probation. Laquan McDonald, Chicago ex-officer Jason Van Dyke was sentenced to just 7 years in 2019 on charges of second-degree murder and 16 counts of aggravated battery over the October 2014 shooting of Laquan McDonald, a 17-year-old African-American boy. Initial police report claimed officers had responded to alerts of a teenager behaving erratically and that McDonald had slashed the tires of a truck with a knife and lunged at officers. Van Dyke fired 16 shots at McDonald as he walked away from the police, according to dashcam footage released a year later. Why are you shooting someone? How is somebody worthy of 16 shots from the back? From the back means he's not a threat. From the back means he's walking away. From the back means he's retreating. The officer was released early in 2022 for good behavior. In 2019, the Chicago Police Board fired four officers for allegedly covering up the shooting. The nine-member board found the officers had exaggerated the threat posed by the teenager. So that's why the beginning of this story starts with initially. Initial police reports claimed officers had responded to alerts of a teenager behaving erratically. Erratic behavior doesn't mean shoot them. You have tasers. You're a trained police officer and all you can do is blow a gun? No, you're racist, you're anti black, and this is an ethnic cleansing. And it has been going on for quite a while. Botham Jean. Former Dallas police officer Amber Geiger was sentenced to 10 years for murder after she killed her 26-year-old African American neighbor and accountant Botham Jean in Dallas. She, September 2018. The sentence was far less than the 28 years prosecutors had sought. Geiger claimed that she entered Jean's apartment, which was directly below hers, by mistake and thought he was an intruder. Does that even sound like it makes sense? No, that sounds like a doctored up lie. Damon Grimes. Mark Bessner was sentenced to 5 to 15 years for involuntary manslaughter after he fired his taser at African American teenager Damon Grimes during a police car chase in Detroit in August 2017. Grimes crashed and died from his injuries. How is it a police car chase? How is it a car chase in the moment if you're able to taser someone? You can't taser someone who's in a car when you're in a car. Damon Grimes during a police car chase in Detroit, August 2017. Grimes crashed and died from his injuries. Rodney King, Los Angeles officers Lawrence Powell, Timothy Wynn, Theodore Brisno, and Stacy Coon were charged with excessive force, but later acquitted after severely assaulting Rodney King, a black American, in March 1991. Acquitted of all charges. You guys go home, continue being police. You did nothing wrong. It's okay, don't worry about it. King was pulled over on suspicion of intoxicated driving but was severely assaulted, resulting in scores of fractures and brain damage. A court's decision to acquit the officers led to widespread riots in the city during which 63 people died. This is Rodney in front of the microphone, famously saying, "Can't we all just get along?" He knew it was a racist attack. He knew that it was an anti black attack. He knew that these people who wore sheets for the KKK turned in their white sheets for navy blue police uniforms. And he was calling to end racial violence. If you've ever seen the footage of Rodney King being beaten down by all of those officers, it, it's it's nauseating. Barry Lawson. Officers F.H. Pascal, W.F. Stevenson, and P.L. Whalen were sentenced to 20 years on manslaughter charges for the March 1938 death of Barry Lawson, a 27-year-old African American, but were pardoned within a year. Before a year was through with their 28-year sentence, they got let out of jail. It's okay. It's okay to kill a black man. It's okay to kill a 27-year-old. Go home. It's okay. Lawson was murdered while sleeping in the lobby of a Seattle hotel where he worked when he was arrested for loitering. Imagine having a long day of work at the hotel you work at and you just kind of fall asleep in the lobby. The officers claim Lawson was intoxicated and had fallen down a set of stairs during the arrest. No. Evidence later emerged that they had beaten Lawson to death and arranged a fake witness to testify that Lawson had fallen. No, he had not fallen and he was not drunk. I know so many people think because liberal states or blue states, such as Seattle, Washington, but the racism here, I've seen many people, because I'm born and raised in Seattle, Washington, I've seen many people come here from the South and say, I prefer Southern racism to Northern racism all day, every day. The Southern racist lets you know who they are. The Northern racist, you think that person's your friend and you let them in, and that's when they destroy you. Go on ahead and let me know what you think of Al Jazeera's take. Al Jazeera is not an American publication. Let me know what you think of how they discussed the issues, how they presented their proof, because what the journalists did was take you down a brief history of police brutality, of significant cases where the police are killing Black Americans and going home the next day, getting put on leave, paid leave of absence. They don't even have to work. It's like a reward for killing a Black American.